In August of 1944, the beaches of Normandy were firmly in Allied hands. France was being liberated at a pace few had predicted, and German resistance in the West was steadily collapsing. To the outside world, the Allied coalition appeared stronger than ever, united by victory and shared purpose. But beneath the surface, a quieter and far more consequential struggle was taking place, one that would determine not only how the war would be fought, but who would shape the post-war world. For years, General Dwight D. Eisenhower had served as the essential mediator of the Allied alliance. His role as Supreme Allied Commander required not just military judgment, but diplomatic finesse. He balanced the strategic ambitions of Britain, the industrial power of the United States, and the political realities of coalition warfare. Nowhere was this balancing act more difficult than in his relationship with British Prime Minister Winston Churchill. Publicly, Eisenhower and Churchill embodied unity. Photographs showed smiles, handshakes, and confident declarations of shared resolve. Privately, their visions of victory were drifting dangerously apart. By the summer of 1944, the question was no longer whether Germany would be defeated in the West, but how the victory would be shaped and by whom. Churchill approached the war as both a soldier and a statesman of empire. The scars of the First World War, and particularly the disaster at Gallipoli, never left him, nor did his fear of Soviet expansion into Eastern and Central Europe. As the Red Army advanced relentlessly from the east, Churchill saw the Balkans as the geopolitical key to the future. An Allied thrust through southern Europe, he believed, could block Soviet influence and preserve British relevance in the post-war order. To Eisenhower, this thinking belonged to an earlier era. He was a product of American military pragmatism, shaped by logistics, production, and scale. He viewed the war not as a massive chessboard of imperial influence, but as a massive engineering problem. Armies advanced only as fast as fuel, ammunition, and food allowed. Ports mattered more than political symbolism, and tonnage mattered more than tradition. This difference in perspective came to a head over Operation Dragoon, the proposed Allied invasion of southern France. The operation promised access to the deep-water ports of Marseille and Toulon, ports capable of supplying entire armies. For Eisenhower, Dragoon was not optional. Without those ports, the Allied advance risked stalling as supply lines stretched back to Normandy. Churchill opposed the plan with growing urgency. He argued that resources should be redirected toward Italy or the Balkans. He warned of missed opportunities and long-term consequences. Behind closed doors, his opposition became emotional. Accounts from the period describe Churchill pleading with Eisenhower, at times visibly distressed, urging him to reconsider. It was not merely a strategic disagreement. It was a final attempt to preserve British influence over Allied decision-making. Eisenhower listened, but he did not yield. He understood that reopening the debate would invite paralysis. The United States was now providing the overwhelming majority of men, equipment, aircraft, and supplies in the Western theater. With that contribution came responsibility and authority. Eisenhower made a choice that would define his command. He refused to revisit the decision. In that moment, something fundamental changed within the Allied alliance. Eisenhower did not challenge Churchill with rhetoric. He did not attempt to outmaneuver one of history's greatest orators. Instead, he exercised the quiet power of final authority. The message was unmistakable. Strategic vetoes rooted in imperial concerns would no longer override operational necessity. On August 15, 1944, Allied forces landed on the beaches of southern France. Operation Dragoon unfolded with remarkable efficiency. German resistance was fragmented, and the speed of the advance exceeded expectations. Within weeks, Marseille and Toulon were secured and operational. Millions of tons of supplies began flowing north, feeding the rapid liberation of France and sustaining the push toward Germany. The military success of Dragoon was undeniable, but its political significance was even greater. The operation confirmed that the center of gravity in the Western Alliance had shifted. The United States was no longer merely a partner, it was the decisive force. Churchill remained a vital ally, and the so-called special relationship endured, but it was no longer a relationship of equals in strategic command. Britain retained influence, experience, and moral authority. The United States held the machinery of modern war. Eisenhower emerged from the summer of 1944 transformed. He was no longer simply a coordinator of Allied interests, he was a commander in the fullest sense of the word, willing to absorb political pressure in order to win the war efficiently and decisively. Operation Dragoon accelerated the collapse of German forces in France. It shortened supply lines, increased operational tempo, and reduced Allied casualties by preventing logistical bottlenecks. It was a victory measured not in speeches, but in throughput, mobility, and momentum. In hindsight, the debate between Eisenhower and Churchill represents more than a disagreement on strategy. It marks the silent transition of power from the old world to the new. The age of empires was giving way to the age of industrial superpowers, and the battlefield was the proving ground. August 1944 was not just a turning point in the war, it was a turning point in history. And in that moment, Dwight D. Eisenhower chose the future.